again, this is part 7 of my Canadian military history series. This one might be a little shorter part for it, but I'm going to talk about the Canadian units that served in Korea. Just to mention them. There's so much to talk about each unit, but this is really just to cover all the units. I mentioned some of the C units already. I'm going to talk about this list of all of them, and yeah, units during the Korean War. During the course of the Korean War, the units or personnel that were involved were either rotated home, or as the case of the RCF fighter pilots, were exchanged with the U.S. Fifth Air Force. The Royal Canadian Navy, during the course of the war, had 8 destroyers in the Korean waters. Some of the air crew in Korea were also veterans of the Second World War. One of the veterans, Flight Lieutenant Omar Levskev, was a POW at the Stalag Luft 3 prison camp for most of the war. During the course of the war, there were 22 RCF fighter pilots that served the U.S. for the Air Force. In the air unit section, I will be mentioning a little bit about each pilot and what they did in Korea, if they served in the Second World War at any citation that they earned. Also, I'll tell you about each of the ground units, like the Royal Canadian Regiment, the Princess Pats, and the Royal 22nd Regiment. So first, I'm going to mention the ground units that were involved. There is a nice list of them here, actually. The Lord Strathcona's Horse, Royal Canadian. The 2nd Field Regiment, Royal Canadian Horse Artillery. 1st Regiment, Royal Canadian Horse Artillery. 81st Field Regiment, Royal Canadian Artillery. The Corps Royal Canadian Engineers, RCE. Royal Canadian Corps of Signals. The Royal Canadian Regiment, 2nd, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Battalions, the Royal RCR. The Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Battalion. The Royal 22nd, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Battalion. The Royal Canadian Army Service Corps, RCASC. The Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps, RCAMC. The Royal Canadian Dental Corps. The Royal Canadian Ordnance Corps. The Royal Canadian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, RCEME. Royal Canadian Army Pay Corps, important for the troops. The Royal Canadian Postal Corps. Royal Canadian Army Chaplains Corps. The Canadian Provost Corps, military police. The Canadian Intelligence Corps. Those were the ground units. Simple as that. There was plenty of action going on. A lot of them were supporting roles. Not all of them were combat roles, you can tell by the titles. Air units wise, during the Korean War, there was only the only Royal Canadian Air Force unit that was operating in Korea was the 426th Thunderbird Air Transport Squadron. They flew in supplies, troops, and other equipment that was desperately needed. The one task that they did perform was the evacuation of wounded soldiers to the main military hospital in Japan, and then on to wherever the soldier of the various countries went to. Also, during the course of the war, 22 RCF fighter pilots, were in exchange with the U.S. Fifth Air Force, as mentioned before. Some were pilots during the Second World War who had a few aerial kills flying Spitfire and Hurricanes, added to the record flying the F-86 Sabre. The most favorite of these is Flight Lieutenant Omar Levskev. He is the first Canadian to have air kill while flying a jet aircraft. There are 21 other fine Canadian pilots who served the U.S. Air Force, and I'll talk briefly about each of them and their actions in Korea. There were records type aircraft they flew during their career in the RCF, which those information ones will be an update on each of them. I'll do an individual video on each of them. I'm just going to mention them briefly here. The first one here is Flight Lieutenant Omar Levskev, Flight Officer Sanford B. Fleming, Flight Officer G.W. Nixon, Flight Lieutenant Claude A. LaFrance, Group Captain Edward B. Hale, who was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Got Flight Lieutenant Ernest A. Glover, another DFC winner. Squadron Leader J. Douglas Lindsay, another DFC winner. Squadron Leader Andrew R. McKenzie. There's a story about McKenzie which I'll mention in his individual video. Wing Commander RTP Bob Davidson, Flight Lieutenant F.W. Evans, Flight Lieutenant L.E. Larry Spur, DFC with the U.S. DFC. Flight Lieutenant R.E. Lowry, Squadron Leader E.G. Smith, Flight Officer Andy Lembros, Flight Lieutenant G.H. Nichols, Flight Officer R.D. Carew, Squadron Leader John McKay, Squadron Leader Bill Bliss, Squadron Leader W.W. Fox or Foy, Squadron Leader J.B. Mullins, Squadron Leader Duke Warren after the armistice, Lieutenant Joe Mac Breen. Those are just their units, their fighter pilots that served. I already mentioned the 426 Air Transport Squadron. The Navy had the 8 destroyers that took part are HMCS Athabascan, the Cayuga, the Sioux, the Nocta, the Huron, the Iroquois, the Crusader, and the Haida. Okay, that's basically all the units that served in the Korean conflict. And the next video, well, I'll be talking about more peacekeeping operations in the next video. So there's a lot in peacekeeping. It's probably about 2 parts will be just on peacekeeping. There's a lot to cover. Maybe 2, maybe 3. I'm not 100% sure yet. This depends how much information I find. Like I said, each individual unit, like air pilot, all the fighter pilots, I will make an individual video about each of them. So there's 22 of them. They're talking about their biographies. Omar Leskiev is probably one of the most famous ones, actually, and I'll talk about him in his own video. I might do that right after this one or a couple days from this video. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to find out a lot about these guys. It's going to force me to research them too, which is good. Get some more work done on them. Okay, well, thank you for watching the part 7, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, the information involved. So thank you. Everybody have a good night and sleep well.